I mean, we still got a lot of fight in us.
I love to go out and show people what this team can do.
It's time for the 25 Sports Special, Rebound, Back in the Dance.
Well, if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. We are 1 day away from the beginning of what promises to be a month-long roller coaster of emotion, quite simply put, a month of madness.
That's absolutely right, Jack. And whether your eyes are set on Indianapolis in the men's tournament or San Antonio for the women, we want you to be prepared.
So let's dive right on in, talking about the Bears. Baylor men's basketball will open things up at Lucas Oil Stadium, home of the Indianapolis Colts, Friday afternoon at 2:30 when the Bears play Hartford, a team that won the American East tournament and is making their first appearance in the tournament ever. Now, normally one seeds have nothing to worry about, but it is worth noting only one 16 seed has ever upset a 1 seed. That team was UMBC, also from the American East Conference. We're going to have more on the Hawks in just a few minutes.
And it's hard to talk about this year's Baylor team without thinking a little bit about last year's group. The Bears were poised to likely be a 1 seed in 2020 as well. Now this group is playing for the seniors whose careers were cut short.
In early March of 2020, the Baylor men's basketball team was ranked 4th in the nation and sporting a 26-4 record going into the Big 12 Conference Tournament.
Why everyone was so successful last year is we won. Everybody played within their roles and played for each other and liked one another. And the chemistry was very good. The player leadership was really good.
All eyes were on Baylor as the 2020 team broke numerous records, winning 23 games in a row, beating 6 ranked opponents, and earning the program's first ever victory at Allen Fieldhouse. The team was predicted to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament.
The way that we came together, the way it was a special group. The guys, everyone was on the same page. We had clearly defined roles, and you know, we had all the pieces that you would need to have a champion squad.
Because it was just so mind-boggling about how the season just ended. Like, what, we didn't play the NCAA tournament, like that never crossed our mind. I didn't play a lot of what ifs, but do I think we could have won the national championship? Yes, without a doubt.
The stunning end was also the end of senior Freddie Gillespie's career at Baylor. He never got the chance to play for the Bears' elusive title.
Every time I watch a Baylor game, it comes to my head. Every time I love watching them play. I love watching everyone do well. Even actually, to be honest, even when I watch a college basketball game in general, just feel like I get that sense of just it being kind of incomplete. Kind of like I missed out on something. I couldn't really finish my own terms.
I remember last season when the season ended, it was just very sad because we thought these guys won't be the same group of guys again.
While Freddie won't be joining the Bears on the court this year, he says he will never stop supporting his former teammates and coaches as they get the chance to finish what he started.
I think last year we played more with the sense of we have something to prove. This year, it seems to be more the energy and attitude is we're finishing up on something.
Well, I'm sure guys like Freddie and Devontae Bandu wish they could be on this year's team right now. I mean, the Bears have had an incredible journey, and we wanted to take a look back on their road to Indianapolis. Baylor's journey began with a major hiccup after Scott Drew tested positive for COVID before the season even began. Baylor was kicked out of its season-opening tournament and scheduled a new one in Vegas on just a couple days' notice. After a few more non-conference cancellations, the Bears finally made it to Big 12 play, where they immediately made their mark, starting conference play 5-0 to set up a key clash with Kansas.
We live for games like this. We live for games in general.
That night in the Farrell Center, Baylor proved they were a step above the rest, jumping out to a 13-point halftime lead and hanging on to win 77-69.
Play Kansas is supposed to be a big game, and I love big games. I love big moments, and I love doing it with my teammates too.
2 weeks later, this happened.
Left side.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, they really just weren't boxing out, so I just went in and got the putback dunk.
But just as the Baylor train started rolling, it came to a screeching halt. A COVID outbreak within the team forced the program to shut down for 3 full weeks, breaking the Bears' championship routine.
When you come back after a break like this, you feel like when you come back from Christmas, it's return to basics.
When they finally returned, they were a shell of their former selves, surviving a close battle with Iowa State before traveling to Lawrence to play Kansas for the second time.
At the end of the day, I mean, they came up here, they outplayed us.
on certain aspects of the game, and we lost.
The Bears were just one win away from a Big 12 title, but with 3 top 20 teams left on the schedule, no one knew for sure if they could recover. Then, at the end of a grueling game in Morgantown, Jared Butler hit a layup with less than 3 seconds left to send the game to overtime, and in the extra period, Baylor made history.
It just means a lot to me just to do it with these guys. They're such great guys, and just probably the top #1 moment ever at Baylor.
Baylor's conference title was its first since 1950. One member of that team 71 years ago was Bill Fleetwood, who lives in Hewitt. He said when he thinks about this year's team, he's reminded of his own journey 71 years ago.
And I think it's been a great year. To me, they play together better than most teams I've ever seen. And because of it, they're a great team.
The Bears a little less successful in the Big 12 tournament after beating Kansas State in the quarterfinals. Baylor lost in the semis to Oklahoma State. Mark Vidal saying the loss has them even more hungry for success going forward.
Don't take this loss and make it think that, we're just some team. We're still one of the best teams in the country at the end of the day. And we just took a lick. We got knocked out. Now we got to get back up.
So what led Baylor to earn its first ever 1 seed in the tournament? It depends on who you ask. One thing's for sure, though, Scott Drew is changing the way elite basketball teams are built. A little more than 2 years ago, something was brewing in the Baylor practice gym.
Every shot I took, it was contested. It was hard, but just playing Maceo one-on-one helped me.
Davion Mitchell and Maceo Teague battled one-on-one almost every day after both were forced to sit out for 1 season due to NCAA transfer regulations. Now, the two are among the top guards in the entire country.
It's that year off. If you got guys that really want to work and grind, they can really improve. They can really get better. And not only do they make your team better practicing against them each and every day, but when their turn that following year comes about, they're a much better player.
Baylor is a team built on transfers. In total, 53% of the team's points, 39% of their rebounds, and 52% of their assists have come from transfer players.
We've had a lot of guys that really have worked hard that made our team better when they were practicing for that year. And then most importantly, when their turn came that following year, they were ready to go because of their work ethic.
But while the new blood has helped invigorate this team, Baylor wouldn't be the same without guys like Mark Vidal, who committed to play for the Bears when he was just in 8th grade. His level of commitment to the program has rubbed off on the guys around him.
I told Coach Drew when I committed here that I was going to get one. And I got one, so that's what's so emotional about it, because we manifest that, man. Like, we've been saying that we need to get one of those.
Now the Bears will need everyone, new faces and old, to play their part if they want to lift the trophy April 5th. Well, I know a lot of you have been studying the bracket all week long, so let's take a closer look at Baylor's draw. Like we mentioned earlier, the Bears will play Hartford in the first round. The Hawks are making their first ever appearance in the tournament this year. They're led by senior guard Austin Williams. Now, Hartford made a living off its defense all season. They held UMass Lowell to just 50 points in the American East title game. But let's be honest, they've never played anyone like Baylor. So let's zoom out to the rest of Baylor's section of the bracket and a potential second round matchup. If they win, the Bears would match up with the winner of Wisconsin and North Carolina, two blue bloods of the sport who have each had uncharacteristically bad years. Now, if we keep going down the bracket, 5-seed Villanova has looked shaky down the stretch, and Purdue finished just 4th in the Big Ten this year. So if Baylor can get some momentum coming out of that first weekend, their draw could be pretty favorable to make it to at least the Elite 8.
Coming up, we'll flip things over to the women's bracket. Texas A&M and Baylor both in the hunt for national title. We'll break down everything you need to know coming up next.
The Baylor Lady Bears are still technically the reigning champs in women's basketball, and they'll look to continue their title defense Sunday right here on 25 ABC. The Lady Bears will open the tournament as a 2-seed, taking on the 15-seeded Jackson State Lady Tigers. JSU won the SWAC to qualify for the tournament for the first time since 2008. They're led by Conference Player of the Year Deja Rogan and Mississippi State transfer Amisha Williams.
This season has clearly brought new levels of adversity across the country, but for one Lady Bear, COVID was just the start. Now, Dee Richards is hoping her resilience will pay off with a tournament title.
In 2020, Dee Richards was playing at another level. The junior was named the nation's top defender as Baylor prepared for another title run.
I have been playing well. Sophomore year, won national championship. Junior year, I've been playing my best basketball, I feel like. And then my season ends.
With the disappointment of an unfinished season fresh in her mind, Dee was more than ready to get back on the court this year. Little did she know she would face her toughest challenge yet.
But it was another abrupt ending to something that I wasn't really ready to end. So it was just like, at this point, God's talking to me. My season ended early last season, and now he's slowing me down again.
On October 24th, Dee collided with Moon Urson in a freak accident during practice, resulting in an injury that left her temporarily paralyzed from the hips down.
When I came back, like, to a realization that I'm still on the ground, I just knew I immediately was like, get me off the ground. Like, let's get up. Like, let me move. And then he was like, well, you haven't moved your legs. We've been trying to wake you up. And that's when they started telling me to, can I feel my toes? Can I feel my legs? And immediately my head kind of went to shambles because I'm like, I can't move anything.
Still don't understand it. But what I do know is I know Dee Richards. She's tough. She's mentally strong. She's a leader. She's happy.
Doctors informed Dee she suffered a non-structural injury to the spinal cord that caused her to go into shock and a temporary paralysis. One doctor even said it was unclear if she'd be able to play again. Dee took that as a challenge.
At the end of the day, you always have people wanting to tell you how your, fate is going to end. But at the end of the day, if I would have let the doctors tell me that I won't ever walk again, then I might have still been in my bed crying, So that's all. Don't let the person next to you define your fate.
She's been practicing with us. She's been taking hits in practice. She just, she's Dee.
A fighter on and off the court, Dee came back in just 38 days and even saw playing time in the game against South Florida.
When you watch Dee play, I think you just realize this kid's good. She's back to playing Dee basketball.
The Lady Bears are making their 19th tournament appearance, but they aren't even close to the most historically successful program in their own region. Baylor is in the same quadrant as Tennessee, which is making its 39th tournament appearance in a row. The 1 seed and team the Lady Bears will likely have to overcome if they want to advance past the Elite Eight, 11-time national champion UConn. So while the first round or two may be a bit of a step down for the Lady Bears, the second weekend promises to be a challenging one. They get that journey started this Sunday against Jackson State on 25 ABC.
Well, those were the scenes in Aggie Land Monday night when the selection committee revealed Texas A&M would be a 2 seed in this year's tournament. Lots of joy, yes, but if you look closer, you might see a twinge of frustration. In their final rankings before the conference tournaments, the committee placed Texas A&M as the final 1 seed in the bracket. It would have been the first ever 1 seed in the program's history. But in the eyes of the committee, a loss to Georgia in the SEC tournament was just too much.
You don't handle business, that's what happens. You have to reap the consequences of that. So, I feel like we're in a good spot. We're in a good position. And, hey, it doesn't really matter where we're seated. We just got to play. We got to win. And that's what we want to do.
Earlier this week, Gary Blair was named a finalist for the Naismith Coach of the Year. And if you followed Gary at all, you know he's not afraid to speak his mind. So if you give him motivation, like maybe a number 2 seed, he's going to come out swinging.
And Texas A&M is the 2011 champion.
10 years after leading Texas A&M to a national title, Gary Blair is still coaching with a chip on his shoulder.
I was probably second on a lot of jobs. I know I was probably second when I got the A&M job, second when I got the Arkansas job. I don't mind. I love to go out and show people what this team can do.
His fire burning a little brighter this week after A&M barely missed out on its first number 1 seed in school history.
I had a feeling we would possibly be a 2, only because I know how committees work. And a lot of times it's, what have you done for me lately?
They're cutting down nets in Reed Arena tonight.
This has already been a landmark season for Blair and the Aggies, who won their first regular season SEC title on the final day of the season. But in the tournament, they faltered, leaving the door open for the chance to fall in the eyes of the committee.
And we've learned a lot and we've worked on a lot, since then to try to make sure that doesn't happen to us early.
But being a 2 seed isn't a death sentence, especially for Blair and A&M. That 2011 title, they were a 2 seed. And like Blair said, he's used to being second.
I'm not one of the blue bloods yet, but I'm in the conversation.
So why not A&M? Like Blair said back in 2011,
You don't expect to win, don't get off the bus.
because maybe being second seeded means a second chance at a title. The Aggies will be paired up with the champs of the Sun Belt Conference, the Troy Trojans. Troy is a high-scoring, up-tempo team averaging 86.2 points per game. That can be a recipe for disaster if A&M gets caught looking ahead. Zooming out a bit, with a win, the Aggies will play the winner of Iowa State and Michigan State, the biggest challenge standing between A&M and a Final Four, 1 seed NC State.
This crazy season has impacted basketball at all levels, including Division III.
Up next, we head down to Belton to check in with UMHB as the Crew wrap up a season unlike any other. While we gear up for the most exciting period of the college basketball season, at the lower levels of the sport, COVID-19 has caused several student athletes, including those at UMHB, to miss out on the chance to play for a championship. In its first year under new head coach Cliff Carroll, the Crew did something that hasn't been done in the ASC in more than 20 years. Go undefeated in conference play during the regular season.
These guys have fought through so much all year long through COVID and snowstorms and electricity blowups and, not having water and to come through this and not lose a game in the ASC is special.
But before UMHB could even start its best season in years, the Crew saw their postseason cut short after the NCAA announced it would only play a national tournament if 60% of conferences in D3 competed this year. Only 49% decided to play, meaning no matter what, the Crew would not get the chance to play in the big dance.
I can't control that the people up in Indianapolis, don't think that D3 is worthy of having a tournament or doesn't have the money or whatever the reason is. We can't worry about that stuff.
While the men came up short in the ASC tournament, they may have qualified as an at-large bid, but we'll never know.
A lot of pride. Going through a season undefeated, a conference season undefeated is a major accomplishment.
UMHB's women had qualified for the tournament 2 years in a row coming into 2021, but this was supposed to be a rebuilding year. Still, Coach Moorfield said the decision to cancel the tournament took the wind out of his players' sails.
This generation of basketball players, that's the thing that they achieved to go for is the NCAA tournament.
But with their season on the line in the ASC tournament earlier this week, the Crew caught fire, beating Hardin-Simmons and then ETBU on their way to a second straight conference tournament title. Still, the thought of what could have been is on their minds.
They don't look at the conference tournament championship and things like that. They want to experience the NCAA tournament because only so few can experience it.
So instead of putting on their dancing shoes, the Crew are waltzing into the offseason, hoping next year produces a similar magic.
While the Crew season may have come to an unfortunate end for Baylor and Texas A&M, the fun is just getting started.
Up next, we'll discuss what you, our viewers, expect from the tournament, and we'll make our Final Four picks. We are just 1 day away from the start of the round of 64, but before that, we wanted to check in on what you said you were expecting this bracket season. We asked how far you thought the Baylor men would make it in the tournament, and 69% of you said they would make at least to the Final Four, with 22% predicting a title.
And even more of you said you were confident the Lady Bears would make a deep run. No one picked Baylor to lose before the Elite Eight. And when we asked if you thought the Lady Bears will defend their title, it was nearly 50-50. Only 48% said yes.
Now, y'all are not nearly as bullish about Texas A&M. Only 19% think the Aggies are a Final Four team, and no one picked them to win it all. So when we asked who would make a deeper run this March, 78% of you said the Lady Bears will continue their run of dominance. And finally, 87% of you, our viewers, said either a 1, 2, or 3 seed will be upset in the men's tournament this year. Now, before we go, we wanted to give you one final look at what we expect from this year's Final Fours.
My predictions are never right because college basketball is never quite predictable, but that's why we love it. My Final Four is Gonzaga, Baylor, Florida State, and Illinois. Even despite 2 losses in the last 6 games, I think the Bears will make it to the Final Four, but Gonzaga has it, or I have it winning it all.
Abby, I'm with you on Gonzaga. I think they're still the team to beat. I think our biggest difference, though, I've got Ohio State taking down Baylor in the Elite Eight. This just isn't the same team that was mowing down opponents early in the year. Now, on the women's side, I've got UConn taking down Baylor and joining a&m, Stanford, and South Carolina in the Final Four.
And for me, I have Baylor, Texas A&M, Stanford, and South Carolina. I think the Lady Bears have a chip on their shoulder and will shock a lot of people in this year's tournament.
The Final Four still a few weeks away, but those first-round games are right around the corner.
The Baylor men will get the action started Friday afternoon at 2:30 when the Bears take on Hartford. That game will be on True TV.
On the women's side, Texas A&M will play Monday at 5 o'clock in Austin. When the Aggies take on Troy, that game will be on ESPN2.
And finally, the big one right here on 25 ABC. Tune in to see the reigning national champion Lady Bears start their quest for a repeat against Jackson State. Tip-off is set for 3 p.m.
Well, thanks so much for staying with us tonight. It is going to be an exciting ride.
And be sure to keep tuning in to 25 Sports throughout the tournament for the latest updates from Baylor, A&M, and so much more.
So on behalf of Abby and our entire crew, we want to say have a great evening.